The quiet arrival. It was a quiet morning in Los Angeles. The sky was soft and pale, filled with a golden light that touched the streets like a gentle memory. Sandra Bullock sat near the window of her home, sipping coffee that had already gone cold. She was not on a film set, not preparing for a role, not smiling for cameras. She was simply there, alone, watching the sunlight fall through the leaves. Years had passed since her last movie with Keanu Reeves. People still asked about them. They loved the idea of their friendship, the bond that never seemed to fade even when the spotlight moved away. But lately, Sandra had withdrawn. She had faced loss, quiet heartbreak, and a loneliness that fame could never hide. She had started believing that some people simply disappear from your story. No fight, no goodbye, just a slow distance until silence fills the space. Then, that morning, her phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. Just a few words. "Hey, Sandy, are you home today?" Her heart stopped for a second. Only one person used to call her Sandy like that. She stared at the screen, unsure if she should reply. Maybe it was someone pretending. Maybe it was her mind playing tricks again. But then, another message came. "I'm around your area. Would love to stop by for a few minutes if that's okay." She felt her breath catch. It was him, Keanu. After so many months, maybe years, he was reaching out. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed back, "Sure, come by." She didn't know why her heart was racing. Maybe it was because he had always brought calm into her life without trying. His presence was like still water, deep and unspoken. But now she didn't know what he wanted. Why today? Why after so long? Within 30 minutes, a black motorcycle stopped outside her gate. She could see it through the curtain. Her chest felt tight as she watched him remove his helmet. His hair had grown longer, his beard a little gray, but his eyes, the same eyes that once made her laugh between movie takes, still held that quiet kindness. She opened the door slowly. "Keanu," she said softly. He smiled gently. "Hey, Sandy." For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was something heavier than words between them. Time, memories, maybe regrets. She noticed he was holding a small paper bag in his hand. "I brought breakfast," he said with that humble tone that never changed, even after all his success. "Pancakes." "Your favorite." "Figured you might not have eaten yet." She smiled faintly. "You remembered." They sat in her garden, surrounded by soft light and quiet air. The city noise felt far away. He poured her some coffee, and she noticed his hands were slightly trembling. He wasn't the calm movie star people saw on screen. He looked fragile. "You okay?" she asked gently. He nodded, staring at the cup. "Yeah, just been thinking a lot lately. About time. About people we lose." Sandra looked at him carefully. "You lost someone?" He gave a small, tired smile. "I lose people all the time, Sandy. Some to distance, some to fate, but lately it's been harder. I visited the children's hospital yesterday. You remember the one we donated to after Speed?" She nodded, memories flashing back. "They told me about a girl who loved your movies," he said softly. "She used to say your smile gave her hope. She passed away last week." Sandra felt her throat tighten. "Oh, God," he looked down. "It made me realize something. Sometimes we forget the quiet ways we touch people, and sometimes we forget to tell those who touched us the most." His eyes met hers, and she felt her chest ache. There was a depth in his silence that said everything words could not. "You were that person for me, Sandy," he said slowly. "You helped me find laughter again when everything in my life was falling apart." Her eyes filled with tears. She didn't know what to say, he continued, his voice breaking slightly. "After all the years, I just wanted to see you, to say thank you, and to remind you that kindness never disappears. It just waits until someone remembers." A tear rolled down her cheek. She reached out, touched his hand. "You don't have to thank me, Keanu. We've both carried each other through storms we never spoke about." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, but sometimes silence needs a voice." The air felt heavier yet peaceful. She looked at him and realized how much pain he carried behind his calm face, how much he had lost. And yet he was still standing, still giving. "You're still the same," she whispered. "Humble, quiet, kind," he chuckled softly. And you're still the one who sees through it." They both laughed quietly. But inside, Sandra felt a deep sadness mixed with gratitude. As the sun rose higher, he stood up. "I didn't mean to stay long," he said. "Just wanted to see you." She didn't want him to leave. Something told her there was more behind his visit. Something he wasn't saying yet. "Keanu, wait," she said as he turned toward his bike. "What's really going on?" He paused for a long moment, his back toward her. The wind moved gently through the trees. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "I'm going away for a while, somewhere peaceful. I need time." She took a step closer, confused. "Away for how long?" He didn't answer, just looked at her with a sad smile. "Take care of yourself, Sandy," he whispered. "You always gave light to others. Don't forget to keep some for yourself." And with that, he put on his helmet, started the bike, and slowly rode away, leaving behind the echo of an unspoken truth. Sandra stood there, her heart heavy, her mind full of questions. She didn't know what he meant by going away, but something deep inside told her this was not just a casual visit. It was something more, something final. As the wind brushed her face, she whispered to herself, "What are you hiding, Keanu?" The story was far from over. It had just begun. The unanswered silence. The next morning felt heavier than usual. Sandra woke up early, though she hadn't really slept. Her mind kept replaying Keanu's words. "I'm going away for a while." It didn't sound like something simple. It sounded like a goodbye disguised as calm. She walked through her living room, the half-empty coffee cup from yesterday still sitting on the table. His jacket smell still lingered faintly in the air, that quiet mix of leather and something gentle, like rain. She sat down slowly, staring at the empty garden outside, where they had shared breakfast. She kept asking herself, why now? Why, after all these years, did he suddenly come, just to say thank you, and then vanish with that strange sadness in his eyes? She knew Keanu well. He was not someone who spoke about his pain easily. When he said he needed peace, it meant something was deeply broken inside him. Later that day, she opened her laptop and searched his name online, scrolling through pages of news and interviews. Nothing seemed unusual. He was still working on a movie, still attending events, still smiling in photos. But behind that calm face, she could now see something no one else noticed. A quiet storm. She closed the laptop and whispered, "You're hiding something, aren't you?" As the evening fell, her phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't him. It was an old friend from the industry, Claire, who had worked with both of them before. "Hey, Sandy," Claire said with a warm voice. "I heard Keanu stopped by your place yesterday." "Yeah," Sandra replied softly. "How did you know?" "He told me he might visit. Said he had something important to tell you." That made Sandra's heart skip a beat. "Important? What kind of important?" There was a pause. Claire hesitated. "I think it's better if you hear it from him, but he's been through something lately, something that changed him." "What happened?" He didn't say. "But when I saw him last month, he looked tired, Sandy. Not physically, just tired in his soul. He's been spending a lot of time at a place near the mountains, somewhere quiet, away from everything." "The mountains?" Sandra repeated. "Do you know where?" He didn't tell anyone exactly. He just called it a place where silence heals. Those words lingered in her mind like an echo. Silence heals. After the call, Sandra sat on her porch, the cool air brushing against her face. The city lights shimmered below the hill. She couldn't shake the feeling that Keanu's visit wasn't random. It was a message. A goodbye wrapped in kindness. The next few days passed slowly. No messages, no calls. She tried focusing on small things, cooking, reading, walking her dog. But each time she passed the table where they had breakfast, she could almost see him sitting there again, smiling softly. Then one afternoon, while cleaning her shelf, she found something tucked behind an old photo frame, a small folded note. It was his handwriting. She froze. She didn't remember seeing it before. She opened it carefully. "Dear Sandy, if you ever find this, it means I couldn't say everything I wanted that day. Some truths are easier to leave in silence. I didn't come to say goodbye. I came to say thank you For the laughter you gave me when I forgot what it felt like. For being kind when the world wasn't. I'll be okay. I promise. Just need time to listen to the quiet again. Kay, her eyes filled with tears. His words were simple, yet they carried so much weight. She touched the paper gently as if it might vanish. She whispered, "What are you not telling me, Keanu?" That evening, she called Claire again. "I need to find him," she said firmly. "Can you help me?" "Sandy, maybe he needs space," Claire said softly. "Maybe he doesn't want to be found." "I don't believe that," Sandra replied. "When someone reaches out like that, it's not because they want to disappear. It's because they're trying to hold on before they fade." There was silence for a moment. Then Claire sighed. "All right, I might know someone who can help. His driver. He dropped Keanu off at a cabin outside the city last week. It's near Lake Arrowhead. Send me the address," Sandra said quickly. "Sandy, are you sure?" "Yes," she whispered. "I need to know the truth." The next morning, Sandra packed a small bag, put on her jacket, and began the quiet drive toward the mountains. The road twisted through forests and mist, each turn feeling heavier than the last. The air grew colder, the silence deeper. As she reached the edge of the lake, she saw a small wooden cabin surrounded by tall pines. A motorcycle was parked outside. Her heart started beating faster. She stepped out, the gravel crunching under her shoes. She hesitated for a moment, then walked slowly toward the door. Before she could knock, the door opened, and there he was. Keanu. He looked surprised, almost frozen, but there was no anger in his eyes, only quiet sadness. "Sandy," he said softly, "you shouldn't have come." "You knew I would," she replied. "You left without telling me the truth. What's going on, Keanu?" He looked down, silent for a long time. Then, with a heavy sigh, he said, "Come inside." The cabin was simple, a fireplace, a few books, a single chair, and photos of places, not people. On one wall hung a picture of the children's hospital. Sandra looked around, her chest tightening. "You've been living here?" He nodded. "For a few weeks. Why?" she asked. He took a deep breath. "Because I needed to face something I've been running from." She waited, heart pounding. He turned toward her, eyes filled with quiet pain. "I was diagnosed with something, Sandy. The doctor said it's not serious yet." "But it could be." Her voice trembled. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly, almost trying to comfort her. "They found something in my spine. It's early, but it could get worse. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want pity. I just needed time to think." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you call me? Why face this alone?" He shook his head gently. "Because that's what I do, remember? I disappear when it hurts too much." She stepped closer, tears rolling down her face. "You don't have to this time. Not with me," he smiled softly. "I know. That's why I came to see you before leaving. I wanted to remember what kindness feels like before I forget myself again." For a long time, they stood there in silence, the fire crackling softly behind them. Sandra reached out, holding his hand tightly. "You've given so much light to this world, Keanu. Now let someone hold the candle for you." His eyes glistened as he whispered, "You always know what to say, Sandy." Outside, snow began to fall quietly over the pines. Inside, two souls sat close, not as stars or friends from the past, but as two people finally sharing their truth, in the quiet place where silence truly healed. The days of quiet healing. The days in the cabin began softly, almost like a dream that moved slower than time. The snow outside wrapped everything in stillness. Each morning, Sandra would wake up early, light the small fireplace, and make tea before Keanu stirred. She could hear his quiet footsteps behind her sometimes, the faint sound of him feeding the fire or opening the old window to let the cold air in. He was different here. Not the movie star people admired, not the man who smiled on red carpets. He was simple, quiet, a man searching for peace in a world that never stopped demanding more from him. "You don't have to do all this," he told her one morning, when she placed a bowl of oatmeal on the table. She smiled gently. "I know, but I want to." He looked at her with gratitude that words couldn't express. She could see in his eyes that every small act of care touched him deeply. He had spent so long giving to others, helping quietly, that he had forgotten what it felt like to receive kindness without asking. As the days passed, Sandra began to notice small things. The way his hands sometimes shook when he tried to hold a cup. The way he would wince when turning too quickly. The way he hid his pain behind that same gentle smile. She didn't ask too many questions. She just stayed. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk, not about fame or movies or the past, but about the quiet things in life. "Do you ever think about how fragile time is?" he asked one night, staring at the flames. "All the time," she replied. "But I also think about how beautiful it is that we still get to feel, even when it hurts." He smiled softly. "You always find the light in everything." "Maybe," she said. "But that's because I learned from you." He turned to her, surprised. "From me?" "Yes. You never gave up on kindness, no matter how broken the world became. That takes strength most people don't understand." He looked down, quiet again. "Kindness is the only thing that never leaves you. Pain fades, success fades, but kindness, it stays." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled gently, painting their faces in soft amber light. The next morning, Sandra found him sitting by the lake outside, his reflection shimmering on the still water. The air was cold and sharp, his breath visible as he stared at the horizon. "You okay?" she asked, wrapping a scarf around herself. He nodded. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" He smiled faintly. "About how strange it is. That after all the noise, all the chaos, peace feels like the hardest thing to hold." She sat beside him quietly. "Maybe peace isn't something we hold. Maybe it's something we learn to sit with." He looked at her, eyes soft. "You always make things sound simple." "Maybe that's because I've learned not to fight everything," she said, smiling. "Sometimes life wants to slow you down. It's not punishment. It's a reminder." He didn't reply, but his eyes glistened with unspoken truth. As the days turned into weeks, the cabin became their world. No reporters, no cameras, no expectations. Just two souls finding healing in each other's presence. Some days were harder than others. There were moments when Keanu's pain flared, when he would retreat into silence, closing his eyes and gripping the edge of the chair. Sandra would sit beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "It's okay," she would whisper. "You don't have to hide it." He would smile weakly and say, "I'm just not used to being seen," and she would reply softly, "Then let me be the first to really see you." Each evening, she would write small notes and leave them near his books. Tiny reminders written on scraps of paper. The world still needs your light. Every storm ends. You are not alone. He found one every morning, and each time, he smiled quietly as if her words gave him strength he didn't have before. One night, as they sat watching the snow fall through the window, Keanu finally spoke about his fear. "I don't fear death," he said softly. "I fear fading without meaning. I fear not giving enough before I go." She looked at him, her eyes warm and steady. "You already gave more than most people ever will. Your kindness changed lives, Keanu. You made people believe in good again." He shook his head gently. "I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if anyone really sees that side of me. The quiet side. The part that just wants to sit with someone and talk about nothing." "I see it," she said simply. He turned to her, eyes glimmering. "You always did?" In that moment, he looked vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. Not the man on screen, not the friend from the past, but someone stripped of all the layers fame had built around him. The next morning, something unexpected happened. As Sandra was making tea, she heard faint laughter coming from outside. She looked through the window and saw Keanu talking with a small group of children who had wandered near the cabin. They were local kids playing in the snow, and he was helping them build a snowman. For the first time in weeks, she saw him laugh freely, pure, bright, without any shadow of pain. She stepped outside, smiling. "Looks like you made some friends," he grinned. "They needed help with the nose." "Apparently I'm good at snowman noses." The children laughed as they ran around, throwing snowballs. Sandra watched him, this man who carried so much pain, yet still found joy in the simplest things. When the kids left, Keanu turned to her and said softly, "You know, maybe healing isn't about being alone. Maybe it's about moments like this." She nodded. "Exactly. Maybe peace isn't silence. Maybe it's laughter after pain." As they walked back inside, he suddenly stopped near the door and said, "Sandy, thank you for not giving up on me." She looked at him and whispered, "I never will." That night, as they sat by the fire, he told her something that would stay with her forever. "You know what I realized today?" he said, staring at the flickering light. "The more we lose in life, the more we learn how to love deeply. Because love is the only thing that doesn't fade when everything else does." Sandra nodded, her heart heavy with quiet emotion. "That's the truest thing you've ever said." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time I stop running from it." And for the first time since his visit began, Sandra saw hope flicker in his eyes again, a fragile light, but real. The snow kept falling outside, covering the cabin in white silence. Inside, two people who had once shared a screen were now sharing something far greater, the raw, imperfect beauty of healing together. But neither of them knew what was waiting beyond that mountain, and how one letter, arriving in the next few days, would change everything once again. The letter that changed everything. 3 more days passed in the quiet of the mountains. The snow outside had begun to melt, leaving behind thin streams of water trickling down the stones. The mornings were no longer heavy with fog. The sky seemed clearer now, almost like life itself was slowly breathing again. Sandra had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, Keanu was getting better. His eyes were less tired, his laughter came easier, and he had even begun taking short walks alone by the lake. Sometimes she would watch him from the window, the way he stood there, still and thoughtful, the sunlight catching the edge of his hair, the calm wind brushing past his jacket. It felt peaceful. It felt safe. But peace, she had learned, never stays too long before life tests it. That afternoon, a small car appeared near the cabin. Sandra looked out, confused. No one ever came there? A middle-aged man stepped out, holding a brown envelope. He smiled politely when he saw her. "Hi, Miss Bullock. I have a delivery for Mr. Reeves. It's marked urgent." She thanked him, signed the slip, and took the envelope inside. Keanu was reading near the fireplace. When he looked up and saw it in her hands, his face went pale. "Who's it from?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. He just stared at the envelope for a long time, his fingers tightening around the arm of the chair. Finally, he stood and took it from her, his hands slightly trembling. The paper was old, worn from travel, sealed with an address from a hospital in Toronto. "Keanu," she whispered. "Is it?" He nodded slowly. "It's from Dr. Farah. She's been overseeing my scans." He walked toward the window, the letter still unopened. The sunlight hit the side of his face, and she could see fear, real fear, flicker in his eyes. After a long silence, he tore the envelope open. Sandra watched as he read, his expression changing from calm to something else, something darker. His lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. "What does it say?" she asked gently. He took a deep breath, then handed it to her with a shaking hand. "It's spreading," he said quietly. "They found new lesions. They want me back for treatment." Sandra's heart dropped. The words on the page blurred as she read them. Medical terms, numbers, test results. All she understood was that the illness he had hoped to control was now stronger. "No," she whispered. "No, this can't be." He sat down slowly, his eyes empty. "I knew something felt wrong these past few days. The pain came back at night. I just didn't want to believe it." "Keanu," she said firmly, moving closer. "We'll go back. We'll start treatment again. You'll be fine. You have people who love you, who will do anything for you." He looked up at her, tears glistening in his eyes. "You know what the hardest part is? I'm not scared of dying, Sandy. I'm scared of leaving the world the same way I found it. Broken, unfair, full of pain." She shook her head, her own tears falling now. "You haven't left it broken. You've made it better. You've given people hope without even realizing it." He smiled weakly. "Maybe. But I still feel like there's something unfinished." "Then finish it," she said softly. "Whatever it is." I'll help you. He looked into her eyes, silent for a long moment. Then he whispered, "There's one thing I always wanted to do, but never had the courage to." "What?" "Remember that girl I told you about at the hospital? The one who watched your movies?" She nodded slowly. "The one who passed away? Yes. She left behind a video diary. Her parents sent it to me last month. I couldn't open it. Not yet. But maybe it's time." He walked to the small drawer near his bed and pulled out a USB drive. Sandra watched quietly as he connected it to his laptop. The screen flickered, and a young girl's face appeared. She couldn't have been more than 15. Pale, smiling, eyes filled with strength that her body no longer had. "Hi, Mr. Keanu," the girl's voice said, weak but full of light. "If you're watching this, I want you to know something. I watched all your movies. I used to imagine you visiting our hospital one day. But even if you never did, I know you care about people like me. Because when you smile on screen, it feels real. Like you mean it. That made my days better. Thank you." Keanu's hand covered his mouth, his shoulders trembling. Sandra reached out and held his arm. The girl continued, her voice softer now. "Please don't stop smiling. And please tell Miss Sandra Bullock that she made me believe that strong women can also be kind. You both helped me live my last days with joy. I wish I could have met you both." The video ended. The screen turned black. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The only sound was the soft crackle of the fireplace. Keanu finally whispered, "She left us her strength." Sandra nodded through tears. "And her message. She saw us both, the real us." He looked down, voice breaking. "I think that's what unfinished meant. I needed to feel that one more time, that our work, our lives mattered." She squeezed his hand gently. "It does, and it always will." As the night grew darker, Keanu sat by the window looking out at the stars. Sandra watched him quietly. She wanted to say something, to promise that he would recover, that things would be okay. But she couldn't lie to him. Instead, she walked over, wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, and sat beside him. He looked at her, eyes tired but peaceful. "You know, Sandy, I used to believe silence was my comfort. But now, sitting here with you, I think silence only heals when it's shared." She smiled through tears. "Then let's share it." For hours they sat there without words, watching the stars shimmer above the lake. The night was still, the world distant. But deep inside, Sandra knew something had shifted, that his journey had turned toward something inevitable. As dawn began to break, a soft light entered the room. Keanu turned to her, his voice almost a whisper. "Promise me something, Sandy. Anything. When I'm gone, don't make it about loss. Make it about light." She swallowed hard, tears streaming silently. "You're not going anywhere," he smiled sadly. "Everyone goes somewhere, Sandy. But not everyone leaves love behind." And in that quiet, trembling morning, Sandra realized that some goodbyes don't come with tears or endings. Some come with peace, the kind that hurts and heals at the same time. The world begins to listen. The next morning came with a stillness that felt different. The snow had melted completely now, leaving the lake clear and silver beneath the soft sunlight. Sandra stood by the window, watching Keanu as he slowly packed a small bag. She could see the exhaustion in his movements, but also a quiet resolve. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. He looked up and smiled. "I know. That's why I'm letting you come this time." They left the cabin together that morning. The road was long, winding through the trees and valleys, carrying them back toward the noise of the city they had both escaped. For a while, neither spoke. The hum of the car filled the silence. Sometimes Keanu would glance out the window and smile faintly, as if trying to remember every tree, every corner of peace they were leaving behind. When they reached Los Angeles, everything felt too bright. The streets were loud, the lights too sharp. Sandra helped him settle into a quiet apartment near the clinic where his treatment would begin. The doctors greeted him kindly, with the respect that came not just from his fame, but from his gentle reputation. A man loved not for what he had, but for who he was. After the first round of treatment, Sandra waited beside his hospital bed. He was weak but still smiling, always trying to make her laugh. "You know," he said, his voice soft, "I never thought I'd see the day when you'd be making soup for me instead of the other way around." She chuckled lightly. "Don't get used to it. Once you're better, I'm retiring from nursing duties." He smiled, though his eyes glistened. "Better, yeah." For a moment, the air grew heavy again. She placed a hand over his and said quietly, "You're going to get through this. We'll take it one day at a time. That's all we ever had anyway," he whispered. "One day at a time." The next few weeks were filled with hospital visits, tests, and waiting rooms. Sandra stayed with him through it all. Some days, he was strong enough to walk around the small garden near the hospital. Other days, he could barely move without pain. But through every struggle, he never complained. The nurses adored him. He always smiled, always asked about their families, always thanked them for even the smallest acts. One day, a young nurse shyly approached Sandra after checking his vitals. "Miss Bullock?" she said softly. "I just wanted to tell you something. Mr. Reeves gave me advice once, a long time ago," he said. "Be kind even when no one notices. That's when it matters most." I became a nurse because of that. Sandra smiled, her throat tightening. "That sounds like him. He doesn't even know how many lives he's changed," the nurse whispered. "He'll know," Sandra said quietly. "One day he'll know, but news travels fast in Hollywood, faster than silence can hide." Soon, rumors began spreading that Keanu Reeves had fallen ill. Paparazzi appeared outside the clinic. Journalists sent endless questions. Sandra did her best to protect his privacy, but one afternoon, when a camera crew caught him leaving the hospital, he stopped and turned toward them calmly. He didn't run. He didn't hide. "Yes," he said softly. "I'm not feeling my best right now, but I'm lucky. I have good people around me, and I'm grateful for every new day." His voice was gentle, but it carried across the crowd like something sacred. "What message would you give your fans?" one reporter shouted. Keanu smiled faintly. "Tell them to take care of each other. Not because the world tells you to, but because you can. Kindness costs nothing, but it saves more than we realize." That clip went viral within hours. Millions of people around the world shared it. Messages poured in, and from fans, from old friends, from strangers who had been touched by his words. But what no one knew was that behind that public calm, he was still fighting quietly, some nights too weak to stand, some mornings too tired to speak. Yet he never once asked, "Why me?" Instead, he asked, "How can I still give something?" One evening, as Sandra was reading beside him, he said suddenly, "Sandy, I want to start something." She looked up. "Something?" "A foundation," he said softly. "For children like the girl in the video, those who fight every day but still smile. I want to build a small place where art, laughter, and stories can heal what medicine can't." Sandra's eyes filled with warmth. "That's beautiful, Keanu. You'll help me, right?" "Always," she said without hesitation. The next few weeks became a mission. While he underwent treatment, Sandra worked quietly with his team to set up the foundation. They named it the Lighthouse. It wasn't about fame or money or publicity. It was about light, the kind that he spoke of in the cabin, the kind that didn't fade even in darkness. As the foundation's story spread, Hollywood changed in small, unexpected ways. Actors, directors, and fans started donating, volunteering, sending letters. Many of them wrote how Keanu's humility had changed their own lives. One message stood out. It came from a young man who wrote, "Mr. Reeves, I used to be angry at the world. But then I watched your interview about kindness. I started helping at a local shelter, and for the first time, I feel peace. Thank you." Keanu read that message aloud, smiling softly. "See, Sandy? Even small things ripple." She nodded. "You always said that." Kindness spreads quietly. He looked at her with deep affection. "You helped me remember it." One night, after a long day of treatment, they sat by the window of his hospital room. The city lights shimmered far below, soft and golden. "Do you ever think about what people will remember us for?" he asked quietly. She thought for a moment. "Not the movies. Not the fame. Maybe just the way we made them feel." He smiled. "Yeah, feelings last longer than applause." There was silence for a while. Then his voice softened. I think I'm finally ready to go back there. To the cabin. You mean when the doctors say it's okay? He nodded. I don't know if I'll get better, Sandy, but I want to finish this story where it began. Her heart ached hearing those words, but she nodded gently. Then we'll go together. That night, after he fell asleep, Sandra sat by his bed, holding his hand. She whispered softly, You've already changed the world, Keanu. You just don't know it yet. Outside, the moonlight fell through the window, covering him in a silver glow. He looked peaceful, as if the world for once had given something back to him. The promise that lived on the winter air returned once more, crisp and clear over the mountains. Weeks had passed since Keanu's last hospital visit. The doctors said he was stable for now, though no one knew for how long. His strength had faded, but his calm had deepened. One morning, Sandra drove him back to the cabin, the same road they had taken before, winding through forests touched with early snow. She could feel his quiet anticipation. He kept looking out the window, as though greeting old friends, the trees, the hills, the distant lake. It feels like time stopped here, he whispered. Maybe it was waiting for you, she said softly. When they arrived, everything looked almost the same. The cabin walls, the fireplace, the soft smell of pine. Yet something in the air felt different. It felt sacred. Sandra helped him inside, guiding him gently by the arm. He sat down by the window, the sunlight falling over his face like a blessing. This place feels alive, he murmured. Like it remembers us. It does, she said, smiling faintly. And it missed you. He looked around, his eyes soft. Thank you for bringing me back. You brought me back first, she whispered. For a while, they sat in silence, watching the lake shimmer outside. Birds moved gently across the surface. The world seemed still, holding its breath for him. In the days that followed, they lived simply. Sandra cooked small meals, made tea, and read aloud from books they used to love. Sometimes Keanu would hum softly while she read, a tune without words. He seemed lighter, even when his body grew weaker. One afternoon, as snow began to fall again, he said quietly, Do you ever think we meet people for reasons we don't understand? All the time, she replied. He smiled. I think we met so I could learn what peace looks like. Her eyes glistened. And I think we met so I could learn what kindness really means. He looked out the window. Then maybe that's the balance we were meant to give each other. Later that evening, he asked her to help him walk outside. The air was cold, but gentle. They moved slowly to the edge of the lake, where the reflection of the moon danced on the water. He stopped and whispered, You hear that? She listened. There was no sound, only the soft wind. Hear what? Silence, he said with a faint smile. The kind that heals. They stood there for a while, the snowflakes resting softly on their hair. You know, Sandy, he said finally, when I'm gone, promise me something. Her voice trembled. Don't say that. Promise me, he insisted gently. She swallowed hard. What? Keep the lighthouse running. Make it bigger. Reach more children. Keep telling stories that remind people kindness still matters. Don't let it end with me. Her tears fell silently. It won't, I promise. He smiled, his eyes peaceful. Then I can rest, knowing the light won't fade. They walked back inside. He sat by the fire, watching the flames move softly. I'm not afraid anymore, he said quietly. I think I finally found what I was looking for. What's that? Home, he whispered. That night, the snow outside grew thicker. The fire crackled gently. Sandra stayed beside him, her hand resting over his. He drifted to sleep with a small smile on his face. When morning came, the world was silent again, brighter, stiller, softer. Sunlight poured into the room. She reached out to wake him, but he didn't move. He was gone. She sat there for a long time, holding his hand, tears streaming quietly. There was no sound except the whisper of the fire and the wind brushing against the cabin walls. But even through the grief, she felt something. Not emptiness, but warmth. The air around her felt full of his peace, his light, his kindness. Weeks later, the world learned the news. Tributes poured in from every corner. Actors, children, doctors, fans. Everyone spoke not of his fame, but of his heart. They shared stories of small kindnesses he had done. Paying for a stranger's meal, helping a crew member, sending letters to hospitals in secret. But it was Sandra who carried his true legacy. She fulfilled her promise. The Lighthouse Foundation grew across the world, from Los Angeles to Toronto to Tokyo. It built art rooms in hospitals, funded creative programs for sick children, and brought hope to those who needed it most. Every wall carried the same inscription: kindness never fades. 1 year later, Sandra returned to the cabin. The lake was frozen again, and the same silence wrapped the world. She walked to the window where he used to sit and placed a small frame on the table, a photo of them laughing during their first movie together. She smiled softly and whispered, "You kept your promise, Keanu." The light still shines. Outside, the wind moved through the pines, almost like a gentle voice carried through time. She could almost hear him say, "Don't make it about loss. Make it about light." She stood there for a long while, the snow falling softly around her. The world was quiet again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of love, the kind that never fades, the kind that lives on in small moments, in kind hearts. In stories told with hope, as she turned to leave, a single ray of sunlight broke through the clouds, lighting the frozen lake in gold. She smiled through her tears. "Goodbye, my friend," she whispered. "You kept your light alive." And somewhere, beyond the sound of wind and time, it felt like the world whispered back, "Thank you."